In the SQL Server 5-day challenge, I asked a question about inserting record in person table. Then I removed this challenge because it was a little complicated for the level of the challenge. But I'm going to go through and show you how you can insert a record in person table, even though it's not part of the challenge. So let me go to SQL Server. So here I'm in SQL Server, and here is a SQL statement that I've written because I want to insert my name into the person table. Let me make sure it's in the right database, and now I can go ahead and execute it. As I'm executing, you'll notice it gives me an error, cannot insert the null value into business entity ID. So I'm gonna go ahead and add another column here, business entity ID. I can just pick it up from here, comma, and then it removed the first name. So let me just pick first name here as well, comma. But what's the value I should be putting in business entity ID? That's a problem. The business entity ID is coming from another table. So I'm going to go to databases, AdventureWorks, and then table. Here is a person business entity. The column that needs to come is from here. So if I go ahead and select star from person dot business entity, I can see the business entity ID. Now each person in this database has a unique business entity ID. That means this person that I'm entering here, myself, needs to have a unique business entity ID because I cannot use one of them. If I try to use one of them, let's say I put in 1, I don't know why I would do that because this is an ID of a person. It's going to give me an error. Oh, the error is where? Oh, 2 double commas here. So, and then execute it. Now there is another column, it's person type. So you need a person type here. So let's go ahead and type in person type. Now I need to figure out what value should be entered for person type. Right? So I'm going to look through this database here. If you're familiar with the database, then it becomes easy for you to know exactly which table to go to, like I did for the business entity. However, I want to show you the process. What you do is, if you're not familiar with, then you look and see if there is anything called person type here. I don't see any person type here. So what I'm going to do is, in this case, I'm just going to go to person.person, because that's the table we are entering, to see what kind of values are stored in there. So click on execute. Here's person type column. I'm gonna go, seems like bunch of 2 characters here. Not exactly sure what that means. And this is where your knowledge of the business and the database comes into play. In this case, I'm just gonna pick one of these values and try to use that and see if I get an error again. So why don't we just do SC? Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and select this and execute. I got an error as expected because business entity ID, I use somebody else's, and it won't allow me to enter that value since there is already a value contained in this table, like the same value. There is already a person with business entity ID 1. So what do you do in that case? Now let me see and go back. Maybe what we need to do here, because we know the business entity ID is contained in this table, we first need to add a new business entity ID in this table and then use that value here. So in order to do that, I'm going to do insert into person.business entity, and then I need the column names and I have the business entity ID, row, good, and modified date. If you'll notice, all these are saying not null. That means we have to enter the values for that. And similar stuff you could have done in the person table to see which values were required. But I wanted to show you the whole process on two different ways of doing it. Now, what should those values be? Where are they going to come from? So knowing the table, and without getting into too many details, because there is a lot that I can go into details here, I'm just going to tell you business entity ID is a system generated number. Row GUID is another ID that gets generated by system, and modified date also gets generated by system. However, modified date we don't need because system will automatically generate. That's how the table has been set up. So I'm going to remove this. Similarly, I am also going to remove this because I know this is system generated. Only thing that I need to insert is row GUID. And once I do that, there will be a new record stored in this. Before I go do that, let me go and select star from person dot business entity, and then I'm going to execute it and scroll down all the way because there are 20,000 records. You can see 20,777 is the last ID. So when I insert a new row GUID, it's going to give it a number of 778 and then the date of today. So what is a row GUID? Row GUID is a function in the database. So you can find the row GUID. Let me go and do values. And then for value, I just need the row GUID. And for that is new ID. That's it. Once I execute that, new ID creates a new row GUID. That's how you create row GUIDs in SQL Server. So execute it, and now you'll see one row affected. So let's go ahead and select this again. Scroll down all the way, and you can see 778. This is the new row GUID, and this is the date. Now that's the ID I can take, copy here, and then I can put it right here. This person will now be assigned to this ID and this row GUID. This is complicated, I know, but this is how you do when you have multiple tables involved. And that's the reason I took it out from the initial challenge, because that was entry-level challenge and I didn't want to complicate things. You might have to watch it a few times to get a hang of how this works, but once you understand it, it's easy. So go ahead and execute this, and now you'll see one row affected. So if I go now select star from person dot person and execute, go down, and here is the value 20778 SC and Anil Batra. So that's it. This is how you enter a value in person.person table. In real cases, when you're trying to enter these values into the database, there might be multiple tables involved. There could have been a table for person type, name style, bunch of tables involved. Then you have to verify and make sure all those values are correct before you can enter a record.